President Biden is still insisting that a ceasefire is in the works between Israel and Hamas, even as the main two parties involved have attempted to distance themselves from that promise. Biden told a group of reporters gathered yesterday that, quote, hope springs eternal on a potential deal. Watch.
Do you still expect a ceasefire on Monday, sir?
Hope springs eternal. I was on the telephone with the people in the region. I'm still, probably not by Monday, but I'm hopeful.
Biden was also pressed on an incident where Israeli forces opened fire at a food distribution site in Gaza, leading to the killing of more than 100 Palestinians. When asked if the deaths would complicate negotiations, Biden responded, quote, "Oh, I know it will." The attack has led a number of prominent Democratic members of Congress to press even harder for an immediate ceasefire. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez told Time magazine, quote, "Of course, my hope would have been and continues to be we should have accomplished a ceasefire by now. But absent that, I would certainly hope that he speaks to the necessity of that at the State of the Union." AOC was joined by Texas Congressman Joaquin Castro and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren in calling for a ceasefire.
Meanwhile, fallout over the uncommitted voters disaster for the Biden campaign in Michigan continues to develop. Anti-Defamation League head Jonathan Greenblatt joined CNBC's Squawk Box to weigh in on the protest vote. Greenblatt called those voters, quote, pathetic, and added those voting uncommitted should get involved in the political process, to which the host responded, "Isn't that what they're doing?" As a reminder, Uncommitted received more than 100,000 votes in the Michigan primary, sapping two delegates away from the president. Michigan Congresswoman Ilhan Omar had strong words for Biden, accusing the president of, quote, greenlighting the massacre of Palestinians. Per The Hill, Omar criticized the Biden administration for approving additional aid to Israel without congressional approval. Quote, this administration cannot claim to be an honest broker of peace while greenlighting the massacre of Palestinians. The restocking of Israel's arsenal is not foreign policy. It is state-sponsored violence waged against defenseless families who only want to live in peace. The White House has yet to respond to the Hill's request for comment. New polling suggests a majority of Democrats prefer a presidential candidate who does not back U.S. military aid for Israel. Per Reuters, 56% of respondents who identified themselves as Democrats said they were less likely to support a candidate who backs military assistance for Israel, compared to 40% who said they would be more likely to support such a candidate. Definitely seems, Jessica, like this uncommitted vote is sending a lot of warning signs to the Biden campaign. Biden, of course, they're suggesting that there would be a ceasefire sometime in the next couple of weeks, although he doesn't think it would happen as soon as Monday. But I think what's fascinating when we break down the numbers here is you have this 100,000 plus voter share for uncommitted in the Michigan primary. Back in 2020, Biden only won Michigan against Donald Trump by 3 percentage points. The Arab American voting population in Michigan was 5%. Needless to say, this issue is top of mind here. So if Biden's not able to win back these uncommitted voters ahead of November, he's in serious trouble of losing a very key swing state. And I wanted to get your take, Jessica, since you're obviously more closely involved in this movement than I am. If you think that some of the people who voted uncommitted in the primary will end up going back to Biden, even if he doesn't change policy, just out of fear of helping to elect Donald Trump?
There was a huge amount of people who were involved in the political process, and this is pulling them away. I think you're right to break the numbers down in the way that you precisely did. Do I think some of those uncommitted voters will show up for President Biden in a general election? Yes. But I think, honestly, the majority of the voters will not. They'll cast their ballot for a third party. When we consider all of the voters that cast a ballot for Joe Biden in 2020, how they'll vote in 2024 is either, I think, for a third party candidate or staying home, that is. To say the uncommitted voter should be involved in the political process, they're doing what every liberal in the country has told them to do, to vote. They're participating in the political process by showing up to the primary in Michigan. So it's a ridiculous statement. It's very patronizing to say that you have a choice between these two candidates that are handpicked by their respective parties. And if you want to vote for someone else, that's just too bad. This is the only way you can participate in politics. That's not how a functioning democracy works. And if you're going to be one of those liberals that blames these voters for Biden losing, and you're watching the program, please don't. That is so detrimental to democracy, to say that the people that are withholding their vote from a president who has consistently said they're going to give money to a regime that is doing things like they did this week, killing 100 Palestinians waiting for food after removing their access to food and their ability to access hospitals. The hospitals that have taken in the 700 injured are hospitals that don't have enough fuel to operate, let alone medicine. This is a situation that was created by Israel, and to support a president who has seen this happen time and again and has said that they don't need to review and then greenlight the strategy that Netanyahu has before he carries out the ground invasion in southern Gaza, that's ridiculous. How can you support someone who's supporting genocide? It's Biden's fault that those votes are lost, not the Arab American voters in Michigan.
Yeah, I'm curious, too, about your reaction to the other major criticism of the uncommitted vote, which is, aside from Jonathan Greenblatt accusing them of not participating in the political process, which I agree is totally bogus. I mean, they spent weeks organizing for this ahead of time. The other criticism, though, has been that if people do this same thing in November, and in fact, they were actually even lobbying this criticism against them in the primary, that voting against Biden or voting for someone besides Biden constitutes a vote for Trump, which is sort of this binary thinking that we've been perhaps conditioned to accept in America, but wanted to get your reaction to that criticism as well.
Right. I've actually had friends who are, lifelong Democrats express concern over this. They're not saying they're voting for Trump, but isn't that what it would be? And no, absolutely not. There's 40% of the country that doesn't vote at all. If President Biden was such a great candidate to be the leader of the country, he would be popular enough that he could get some of those people to come out and cast a ballot who would normally stay home. To assume that all of the voters that consistently cast ballots in elections must either cast a ballot for Donald Trump or Joe Biden is ridiculous. People have seen that this two-party system has produced the same conditions year over year for people abroad that are the victims of U.S. imperialism, and for working people at home that have had wages stagnant since the 70s. There's a reason people don't want to vote for the same two parties that have essentially run our country into the ground. Everyday life's really difficult for a lot of people. And it's not like Biden produced this economy. It's not like Trump did. It's one that's been in decline since the 70s or earlier. And so when you face the facts on that and you realize that no candidate has come forth and really spoken to those issues to get the people who don't cast ballots to come out and to get the progressive and working class faction of the Democratic Party to support a presidential candidate, it's really the fault of the party and it's the fault of the presidential candidates. And we're really creating infrastructure for, a three-party system, a multi-party system, by having people just show up and cast a ballot for uncommitted. It shows that there's a base there. It shows that there are people there willing to vote for candidates who have not run yet. And so we're never going to get to a place where we have a multi-party system where everyone's ideology or political persuasion is represented if we just keep complying with the two-party system that's been forced down our throats, frankly, by the elites that run the two-party system.
Yeah, I don't agree with Ilhan Omar on much, but she's right that the Biden administration should not be sending any foreign aid to anybody, including Israel, without congressional approval. And we know that that is one particular spending package that has been held up by the House, which is controlled by Republicans. Speaker Mike Johnson has said that a standalone Israel funding bill is not getting a vote in the House. He doesn't want to pass a foreign aid package with Israel and Ukraine funding without border security measures. And the point of having divided government is that the president has to get approval from a bipartisan Congress, a divided Congress, divided government, without just sending taxpayer money abroad. So I agree with Ilhan Omar to call him out for that. We're going to leave it there. We'll be back with more Rising after this.